When you go into Sana'a, the capital of the Yemen, you go back 1,000 years into history. Until the revolution led by Brigadier Salal just a month ago, nothing can have changed here for centuries. No one need spend very much time regretting the passing of the imamate here. The rule under the old Imam, Ahmed, was cruel, despotic, and kept the Yemen one of the most backward countries in the world. Sana'a is reputed to be the first city in the world to be rebuilt after the floods. The people who roam its narrow, dusty streets have lived for centuries in deep-frozen barbarity, which has only occasionally been disturbed by the probing of the outside world. Sana'a looks today much as it must have done in biblical times. Since I was in Sana'a, the deposed Imam Bada, whom the rebels hoped was dead, has reappeared over 100 miles from here at the head of an army of loyal tribesmen in the north of the Yemen, and he's promised to win back his feudal kingdom from the leader of the revolution, Brigadier Salal. Every man who can afford a rifle carries it as a prized possession, and it's the support of these men that Salal needs for his new regime. The old Imam kept the tribes subdued by the classical method of taking hostages against their good behavior. Many of the tribesmen seem to me to have come into Sana'a just to see what was happening. They spend much of the day chewing a mild narcotic called khat, which distends their cheeks like a ping-pong ball. The Yemen is incredibly poor, and its economy is based entirely on agriculture. Everything is done by the most primitive methods. Donkeys, for instance, are still used for threshing. It would be a problem for any government to bring the Yemen into the 18th century, let alone the 20th. Outward signs of the revolution are few, until you look more closely, for instance, at this picturesque camel train. The boxes are ammunition, stamped Imam in English, and they're being carried into an arsenal now controlled by the Republicans. The revolution began at midnight on September the 26th. During the 8 days of his reign, the new Imam Bada had released the tribal hostages, freed political prisoners, and appointed Salal his commander-in-chief. This policy of appeasement proved fatally misguided. Walking through the ruins of his damaged palace, I heard the story of the revolution from the new government's spokesman. In the center of Sana'a, there's a square which dominates much of the city, and at midnight, 6 Russian-built tanks of the Yemeni army moved in from their barracks outside the city wall. 3 stayed in the square and 3 surrounded the palace. The Imam was telephoned and asked to surrender. He refused, and the tanks began shelling the palace. The Imam fought back until dawn, when he left through a small side door, normally used by the women. It doesn't say much for the revolutionaries, as there are only, as far as I could see, 3 ways out of the palace in all. The revolutionaries pursued the Imam for 22 days, until they lost track of him in the north. When he'd gone, the public were allowed into the palace to loot. Hundreds of pounds of radio and photographic equipment appear to have been destroyed. What film had survived was almost all of Mr. Khrushchev, Mao Zedong, and Russian military parades. When the Imam had escaped, the revolutionaries turned their attention to the palaces of other members of the royal family. This is the home of Prince Hassan, the Imam's uncle, who was leading the Yemeni delegation to the United Nations at the time of the revolt. This palace was also shelled and looted. In all, 3 royal princes were reported killed. In Prince Hassan's palace, the revolutionaries also claim to have found a vast hoard of silver thalers, the antique Austrian coins still used in the Yemen. In another palace, the royal women were collected together and kept unharmed until the new government could find a more useful way of life for them. Now, this sort of organized demonstration takes place in Sana'a about 5 times a day. The slogans are against Saudi Arabia and Jordan and in praise of Nasser and Salal. Other propaganda pictures are these of Imam wearing Western dress and dancing with Western women. They're deeply shocking to Muslim Yemenis who were put in prison by the old Imam if they wore shirts or trousers. The face of the revolution, as seen in these soldiers now guarding the royal palace, is ridiculously young. They insisted on posing with their Czechoslovakian rifles. One of them told me he was only 14 years old. In all, I saw very few signs of the Yemeni regular army in Sana'a itself, and so-called soldiers wore any uniform they could lay their hands on. An officer accompanied the cameraman and myself wherever we went and did his utmost to prevent us filming anything military. There were, however, plenty of Egyptian troops, several hundred in and around Sana'a, out of the 10,000 now estimated to be in the Yemen. Most of them are presumably up at the northern front. And some of the Egyptians are repairing military equipment. For instance, the 20 or so tanks the old Imam bought from Russia, another shot we were forbidden to take. They're also flying bombing raids in Russian-built planes of the Egyptian Air Force, like this one crashed on the runway. While I was in Sana'a, so was the Egyptian Minister of Defense, Abdullah. He was there for talks with Salal. Salal told me later they'd renewed the defense agreement by which Egypt would send support to Yemen if Yemen was attacked by Jordan or Saudi Arabia. When I met Salal, he showed me Saudi Arabian-made mortar bombs and an American automatic rifle captured, he said, during fighting in the Yemen. He called them proof that Yemen is being invaded. And he also believes that Britain is helping the Sharif of Behan, whom he says is fighting him on his eastern border. This is the Saudi crest. Salal himself was kept in and out of jail by the old Imam, but didn't join the revolutionaries until 2 years ago. Why did the revolutionaries decide to act now?
لماذا قرر الثوار أن يقوموا بالثورة في هذه الأيام؟
The truth is that the revolution has been delayed. It was supposed to have taken place 3 years ago, and this revolution is connected with the 3 previous attempts which failed. It succeeded this time because the errors of the past were avoided.
How many Egyptians are there here now in Yemen?
About 1,000, mainly technicians.
How long does Brigadier Salal think they'll stay?
Until the aggression of Saudi Arabia, Jordan and Behan is ended.
Is Brigadier Salal thinking of joining the United Arab Republic?
This question is premature. We've announced that our policy is based on independence and peace. We welcome friendship with any country, whether Arab or not, whether Eastern or Western. We made this revolution because the Yemeni people were suffering misery and poverty to an extent unprecedented in history. We have many problems to deal with, especially in education and development.
Is Brigadier Salal a communist?
I am a Democrat.
What is the biggest problem facing Yemen?
The problem of aggression against the Yemen by Behan.
What about economic problems?
Our economic problems are very great because the previous government left nothing in the country. Even the money from the national exchequer was sent abroad.
Is Brigadier Salal thinking of a greater Yemen? For instance, does he wish to join Yemen up with Aden and the countries of the Aden Protectorate, the South Arabian Federation?
We have work to do in the north, and in the south we leave this question to its own people. We have many economic problems arising from the backwardness and underdevelopment of the country, which are far more important.
Aden is also the headquarters of Middle Eastern Command. As well as the port, Britain keeps an air base and a military base here. It's practically our last effective strong point in this part of the world. Between 11 and 12 million pounds of the British taxpayers' money is spent in Aden every year. Recently, RAF Hunter fighters have been flying hourly patrols from Aden along the Yemeni border with Bayhan. In all, there are probably about 7,000 British servicemen stationed in Aden. And Britain also has responsibility for the colourful army of the Federation. Aden's population is largely Arab, mostly Yemenis, who have no vote in Aden. Until the revolution in Yemen, they didn't represent much of a political problem, since union with the Yemen under the rule of the old Imam was clearly a great deal worse than British paternalism. In the past, the Yemenis moved fairly freely back and forth across the border. Now the revolutionary government in the Yemen is appealing for them to return and help build the new state. A mass exodus of Yemeni workers would be a serious problem to Aden. The British Petroleum Company's refinery is the symbol of Aden's greatest importance of all, the Middle Eastern oil. 80% of the oil we use in this country comes from the Middle East, mainly from the Persian Gulf, and Britain has treaties of protection with Bahrain, Qatar, and the Trucial states, as well as our commitments to the Protectorate. When last year British troops went into Kuwait at the invitation of the ruler, it was as much to protect our oil investment there as to protect the new state against Iraq. The launching pad for the whole of this operation was Aden. In 5 days, Britain was able to put approximately 6,000 troops into Kuwait. Until we can keep a troubleshooting force permanently at sea, Aden is essential for the protection of British oil interests in the Gulf. The Kuwait operation didn't lead to fighting with Iraq, and as soon as an Arab force was able to take over, the British troops were withdrawn to the better conditions of Aden. Britain is thinking of staying in Aden for some time to come. Our investment there continues. Everything is being done to make this small, hot fortress attractive to the troops who have to serve there. Part of our investment is a new army camp, costing £6 million. The labour on this project is 100% Yemeni, and a general strike would bring this work to a total halt. Already the Yemeni Republican flag is prudently flown above nearly every stall in the market of the Arab town. A strike in Aden, if it comes, will be over Britain's plans to merge the colony with the Federation. Geographically and economically, this makes good sense, as the British government claims. But politically, opposition to it in Aden is growing, both genuinely and because of intimidation. The Aden TUC is one of the best organised trade unions in the Arab world. Ironically, its leaders were trained in London. If there's to be real opposition to the merger, it will come through the TUC and its political group, the People's Socialist Party. Already there have been demonstrations and arrests. The future of Aden was discussed in the House of Commons this week on Tuesday, and the British government, in the person of Mr. Duncan Sands, the Colonial Secretary, made it quite clear that it's going ahead with its plan to merge Aden with the South Arabian Federation. Mr. Sands, your plan for the merger was in fact devised before the revolution in the Yemen. Has the revolution made any difference to your thinking?
It's not made any difference to our basic thinking as to the desirability of the merger, but I think it has undoubtedly made it more desirable and more urgent to bring about this merger.
It's been suggested, though, that the majority of people in Aden might rather join up with the Yemen, now there's a new regime there, rather than with the Federation.
I really don't think there's any large section of opinion in Aden that wants to join the Yemen. There is a sort of popular cry for it, but when they see what's going on in the Yemen at the moment, when they see villagers coming back across the border who've been mutilated by Egyptian fire bombs, when they see soldiers deserting from the Republican forces over the border, I think a lot of them having second thoughts.
There is, as you, I think, say, some opposition building up in Aden to the merger among Yemenis and a certain amount among Adenis, mainly by the TUC. If you push the merger through, don't you think you may have another emergency on your hands in Aden?
Well, first of all, let's be clear. Everybody in Aden, virtually, is agreed that it's not a good thing for this small place, which is about half the size of the Isle of Wight, to remain separate. It forms a natural part of the whole of that area. I'm thinking of the Federation, the other states around. It's the natural port, natural commercial center, natural outlet for all that area. And it's much, much better that customs barriers and political barriers of all kinds should be broken down. As for comparing it with in any other situation, as for example the Federation of Rhodesia and as-Sallal, we haven't got that same problem here. There you had a problem of antagonism between black people and white people. Here what we're doing is removing an unnatural division between people of one race, one religion, one language, who've always looked upon themselves as belonging together.
Another criticism that's been made of the plan is that it's not so much in the best interests of Aden as to safeguard the future of the British base in Aden.
Well, what I've just said, I think, indicates that we believe it is essentially in the best interests of the people. But of course, anything which contributes towards stability in that area is obviously going to be a good thing for the peaceful maintenance of our base there.
Do you think that we'll be able to hold on to the base indefinitely?
Well, indefinitely is a long word, but I don't think there's anybody practically in Aden who wants the British to go. The British base brings in enormous amount of money and a great deal of employment.
Mr. Sands, thank you very much indeed. In the Yemen, the Imam is fighting to win back his throne, apparently with support from Saudi Arabia and Jordan. And on the other hand, Colonel Nasser is heavily committed to support the revolutionary leader, Brigadier Salal. This could lead to a situation in which the whole Middle East would be involved in a war. In Aden, the revolution in the Yemen has given added strength to those who oppose Britain's plans to merge the colony with the Federation. Because of our dependence on Middle Eastern oil, this revolution in a faraway and little-known country has touched all our lives. From now on, we shall hear a lot more of both Aden and the Yemen. Good night.